Hello everyone, welcome back to Case Studies with the BizDoc. This week it's Toys R Us, one of my favorite case studies that I've researched in a while. It's a story about a brick and mortar company, in other words, old school physical company that didn't adapt to the future and consequently just this week filed a bankruptcy. They're probably going to live through it at least for a little while, but times are not good. So let's go take a look at the history of it and some things that we can learn about strategy and adaptation in a changing world. Toys R Us was founded in Washington, D.C. way back in 1923. There were some name changes and they really took off in 1948. That was right when the baby boom happened. Everybody came home from World War II, families were established, Barbie, Mattel, a lot of things going on in that baby boom. And from 48 to 64, you had 20 years of baby boom there, but from 48 to 98, when the fun really started at Toys R Us and things were changing, they were a category killer.
Tom's word of the day.
Let me tell you what a category killer is. Category killer is somebody who generally has more than 50% market share. And when it came to the retail toy store to go buy stuff for your kids and games and things like that, they were the category killer. They had over 50% of the retail market share by certain reports, and they were everything. If you're gonna go, you went to Toys R Us, and they were this big. And there were small toys stores like FAO Schwarz, which figures into this story, and KB Toys and Hobby Shops, things, but Toys R Us was the category killer. All paths went to Toys R Us when companies like Mattel were inventing and bringing out new games and toys. And that 50 years was really the golden age of Toys R Us. And it all changed in 1998. In 1998, there's a lot of things that are going on around that time. Amazon was founded in 94, would go public in 97. The Netscape IPO, and if you remember the Netscape IPO, this is a very big deal because it was a browser that could be adapted and used. There was a lot of things that changed when the browser came to the internet and you just didn't enter direct addresses. Suddenly you were in a process where the browser and things could do things for you, offer security, offer commerce. A lot of things were happening, and that was here. In 1999, in an attempt to ship things and get things done, Toys R Us had the Christmas from hell. It was a disaster. It was a public relations disaster. It was a customer disaster. They failed to deliver a ton of toys in time for the holidays. The systems, the processes, it was a fumble of just gargantuan proportions. So what do? They have a new CEO in the year 2000, and they enter, his name was John Eiler, and he had come from FAO Schwarz. Well, you know what? No offense, but in a changing marketplace, I think that was a strategic error. They said, let's hire a new CEO. Hey, here's one at a toy store. They should have been thinking about commerce, maybe even a little bit of e-commerce. We can't be real negative on Toys R Us at that time for not thinking too much about e-commerce, because e-commerce was still a baby. We were still going to the malls. Malls were still booming, but there were still some things that were changing and new skills need to be brought in. The automobile industry had learned that painful lesson during the Japan shift after the oil crisis of 1976. Hey, Americans want better cars with higher quality that get better gas mileage. And so they brought in talent that wasn't there before and nurtured their own new talent to adapt and go forward. This was an opportunity lost. They brought somebody in that was in a toy industry retail mindset. They didn't bring new thought to the table. Nonetheless, John Eiler shows up in year 2000 from FAO Schwarz, and here we go. They, in an effort to find a remedy to this, they looked to Amazon and committed what now in retrospect was an unthinkable sin. A 10-year deal to be the exclusive provider of toys to Amazon. In other words, Amazon won't go to Mattel, Amazon won't go to other areas. Amazon has the exclusive online source, would be Toys R Us, to Amazon. So Amazon is in this 10-year deal. Well, this thing lasted about 3.5, 4 years, and Amazon came back and said, look, you don't have the biggest selection. You don't have some popular things, and it's annoying to me. I want to sell that too. And what was happening is, think about it. From an internet standpoint, Amazon's shelf space is infinite. From Toys R Us, it's only as much as you can get into a store, even if it's a very, very big store. Nonetheless, this thing got sour and they ended up in court. I'm going to jump forward a little bit. In 2006, Toys R Us would actually win the court case that they sued Amazon for reneging on this exclusive deal, and Amazon was letting other small vendors and independent vendors sell toys online. Well, now Toys R Us wins that suit in 06, but they didn't get paid to 09, and they were paid $51 million. Wait a minute. You've got a multi-billion-dollar business here. Your online retail partner, you do a 10-year deal with, and then the thing falls out of love. You end up in court and you only collect $51 million on it. I'll tell you, there's only one word for that, and it's damn! You blew it. You also let the fox in the hen house, and you taught Amazon the toy industry. And they also are building e-commerce better and better. So in 05, also about the time they win the suit, they buy FAO, actually it was 06, excuse me, 06, they buy FAO Schwarz. So the toy guy and the retailer trying to meet growth targets and do things like that says, I've got an idea, let's buy FAO Schwarz. Well, at the same time in there about this is going on, and there are disputes in the story of whose idea it was, but nonetheless in 05, when Eiler left, this idea was apparently on the table. What also happened there is a LBO. An LBO is a leverage buyout, and it just means that you bought somebody using leverage or debt. Lots of it. 6.6 billion, a collection of LBO companies such as KKR, Bain, legendary LBO specialists, they buy Toys R Us for $6.6 billion, $26.74 a share. That stands for all-time high. Stocks at an all-time high. So they're buying at the peak, and they paid 6.6, but their down payment, 1.3 billion. Means they went out and got $5.3 billion in debt. And apparently they felt that despite the lawsuit with Amazon, which they certainly knew about, despite what was all the frenzy that was going on, that they felt that there was really a profitable company under here that they can make a lot of money on. Because leverage buyout firms usually take companies from the stock market, pay a lot of money for them, and then generate the profit out of them every year. That's what an LBO strategy is. Hey, you know what? That company could be run like an ATM. Put good management in it, I'll buy it, and then it'll keep kicking out profits to me. Ding, 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 coming out of an ATM. That's the theory behind leverage buyout. And the profit I make is this much. The interest I pay on the debt is this much. So guess what? I'm making money, even though I got all this debt and I got to be paying off. LBO. Well, here they go, and they buy FAO Schwarz. And by the way, there was something else right before all this happened. Toys R Us actually tried to build this thing called Kids R Us. It launched it in '83. It lived 20 years, and it dies very quietly in '03. But it was an indication that underneath they saw themselves as pure retail and a brick and mortar, and they were adapting very slowly. So they get bought here, and we move forward. 2009, they announced that they had $600 million in online sales. Now, that's pretty good, but it's nothing compared to what was happening in e-commerce. Then a year later, it was 782. Finally, in 2011, they actually crossed $1 billion in online sales. A year later, it was 1.1 billion, which is only 10% more. Now, I'm sitting here looking at this saying, they were still opening stores and they were still trying to grow online. Guess what? They were trying to live in two worlds, and neither was very successful. And there's something that I look at very, very carefully here that I had experience with. When I was at a previous company that was a video, it was one of the first companies to bring video to apps on mobile phones. One of the companies I called on was Blockbuster in Dallas, Texas. And I talked to Blockbuster about putting their stuff on a mobile device and stream through. I said, what kind of rights do you have with the studios? What kind of ability you have to legally do that? Or does the studio only want you to sell physical media? And they kind of push back on me and say, you don't understand, data on a phone is so expensive, the carriers won't do that. And I said, wait a minute. I come from the wireless carriers, I understand this transition. And about that same time, there is a very funny quote from the CEO of Blockbuster, Jim Keyes, doing an interview with the Motley Fool, and he said, neither Redbox or Netflix are even on the radar screen in terms of competition. It's more Walmart and Apple. In other words, people competing for my sale of a DVD or rental of a DVD. And so they completely missed the digital transition. So my point here is Toys R Us isn't exactly alone here. And they go out after struggling, they tried a variety of techniques. Online's only going so-so, and in 2013 they announced, our toy stores will be open 24 hours on this day and this day. And some stores were open 87 hours straight or something like that, like over 2.5 days straight. And to what I thought about it at that time, and I'm like, wait a minute. The internet is open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And now you got to hire all these people and do all this stuff. And who's going to get out of bed to go at 3 a.m. to Toys R Us to buy the next Barbie for their daughter? Okay, so keeping stores open that long isn't going to work. And then they hired David Brandon as CEO. He was the athletic director at the time at the University of Michigan, and he had previously taken Domino's Pizza public. So he had experience going public, so it looked like that the LBO guys, the banks, Bain and KKR, were now thinking, gosh, maybe we need to take this back public again on the stock market because we'll use all that billions on the stock market to pay ourselves back and to get a return on our money. So there was speculation they were going to do that. But at the same time, there were news that they were losing, $100 million a quarter or more. And it's like, wait a minute. The Toys R Us looks like it's getting its butt kicked by Amazon, and you're going out here and you hire a guy whose experience appears to be consumer retail, like Domino's is food retail, and he was the athletic director at the University of Michigan. And he announces, which cracked me up, 2016, we are not afraid of Amazon. They're a formidable player and they can change prices 88 times a day. We don't live in fear of these guys. We know who we are and we're good at it. That's what he's saying in 2016. In 2017, he makes an announcement that, hey, we got to make a big investment in our systems and revamping things, and we're going to invest $100 million to fix our e-commerce system. Wait a minute. $100 million to fix an e-commerce system. Fix? Amazon's had a 10-year head start on you from books to multi-product e-commerce. And you're just going to put $100 million in? Amazon spent in 2017, have I got this right? $5 billion on R&D. Now there's the Echo, the Dot, the Kindle, the Fire TV, a lot of things in there, but $5 billion, you got to believe that a huge percent of that is on their e-commerce system that they continue to make better and better and better. And these guys are talking about being 10 years behind and they're going to invest $100 million to fix it. Man, that's worth another damn, but I just can't bring the energy to do it because I'm so stunned at the news. They also sit there back and announce, FAO Schwartz is closed. So they bought that company, and within 10 years of buying it, they close it. There's a beautiful premier store in New York, FAO Schwartz, been there years and years. Don't know how, Apple's got an Apple store down the street. Don't know why you are not able to keep that thing open in such a prime location. Nonetheless, they do that. And then he does another interview and says this. The website's the front door of our brand. And it's 60% of our customers visit our website before going to a store. And in a year to 2 years, we have about that much time to catch up on 10 years of innovation, and that's no small feat. Oh my gosh. So there's all this admission that the stuff is not going well. And then you come out now and they filed bankruptcy. So let's step aside for a moment on that. You got the University of Michigan athletic director who did have a business background and took things public is now saying $100 million to fix e-commerce. Heck, for $100 million, I don't know that you could recruit a University of Michigan football team. But if you want to find out, let's get Adidas on the phone. Okay, enough of that. Let's get back. You've got just a tremendous amount of denial all coming to the surface. So the strategic issues that happened here came home to roost here, and now they file bankruptcy, and they're asking the court to help them break and restructure all that debt. And, oh, by the way, they need $2 billion more debt. Now, there's probably a bank out there for the right interest rate that's willing to give them the $2 billion and structure the other. Where there's money, there's always a deal to be made, but it may be expensive money. And right now, when we step back and look at this, what you have is a brick and mortar company that went through the golden age of retail and toys, and they were the category killer. And what happened over time is they unwittingly educated who would be their biggest online competitor. They missed cues to bring additional knowledge into the company, and although they got to $1 billion in online, they weren't continuing to invest apparently, and got to a point where they felt that they were now 10 years behind everybody despite $1 billion in online. To wrap, this is a case study about strategy and adapting. Strategy is not executing today, it's the plans on how to best execute tomorrow. Adapting is responding to a changing marketplace. And you have to invest to adapt, and you have to bring in new brains and the blood to adapt. If you don't have visionary people on site working for you on your team right now that can do it. And Toys R Us missed it. So from one side of history where they were beloved and known and tremendous, to now, you know, a bankrupt, multi-billion dollars in debt, getting crushed by Amazon. It's sad to see that. But you know what? We've seen it before, and we'll see it again. As the industries change and things change, stuff comes and goes. One thing that did change a couple weeks ago is the Pillow X. Please subscribe to Valuetainment, the best channel on the internet for entrepreneurial content. And until next time, I'm Tom Ellsworth, and I hope I left you better than I found you.